Grace to you and peace. My name is Brother Tommy Piolata, and I'm a Capuchin brother, hence the habit. And today I'd just like to offer a few brief reflections on my dear friend St. Joseph, the father of Jesus, the just man, as it's said in the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew. Before we start, though, I should say that ever since I was a young boy, I felt a kind of belonging to St. Joseph. He's always captured my imagination, and he's always been such an important part of my life. He's always been there for me. So I'm really excited and grateful to have this opportunity to share a bit about St. Joseph with you. There's so much to reflect about, though, when we talk about St. Joseph. For instance, I'm often moved and consoled and invigorated even by the affectionate and protective and the tender love that he must have given to Mary, or by his devoted love and care he must have given to Jesus. I see in Joseph a radiant masculinity and a beautiful humanity. And so when we turn to Joseph, we see a man who is humble, who is full of love, who is faithful to the Lord without calculating the cost. We see a man who is strong, who gives his life to his wife and to his child. A man who, in his silence before and in his commitment to God, he's able to welcome Jesus into his home, and so welcome the very mystery of our salvation into his arms. So I would encourage us to simply think about St. Joseph, to imagine the events in his life. For me, thinking about Joseph has been so powerful, has been spiritually important in my life. After all, in a powerful homily, St. Lawrence of Brindisi, one of the Capuchin doctors of the church, he was a great preacher. He said that after Jesus and Mary, Joseph is the holiest of all the saints. And so, my brothers and sisters, we can learn from Joseph. He's more than just kind of a extra figure in the drama of the Messiah's birth, right? His role is of paramount importance. A role that today is ever so relevant. What is his role? I think we can say he is the surrenderer. Joseph the surrenderer. Joseph, however, does not surrender because he is weak. To surrender like Joseph did requires strength, it requires conviction, requires heroism. A weak man surrenders because he fears for his life. So he surrenders because he's afraid. But Joseph surrenders because he knows what we all too often forget, that our life is not our own. So Joseph surrenders not because he's weak and he wants to protect his life, but because he knows God. He knows that he belongs to God. And so to surrender is to belong, and to belong is to be available. I think this is kind of the mystery of Joseph in some sense. Let me say that one more time. To surrender is to belong, and to belong is to be available. Joseph surrenders his will, his desires, his agenda, because he first and foremost belongs to God. Perhaps an important question we can ask ourselves today is, to whom do I belong? Do I belong to myself? Or to others? Or do I belong to God? Do I belong to my aspirations, my desires, or do I belong to God? Because Joseph belongs to God, he is available to God. It's here that we see the powerful heart of Joseph shine, right? In his utter availability. Indeed, availability to God can serve as a kind of measuring stick of our own surrender. The idea being that the more I'm available to God, the more I have surrendered my life to God. And so in this respect, Joseph's is an availability that overflows. I mean, consider that in the beginning of Matthew's gospel, Joseph has 4 dreams, Matthew 1 and Matthew 2. And in all of these 4 dreams, the will of God is communicated to him. And after each dream, Joseph accepts without qualification, without hesitation, what the dream communicated to him. Joseph is a man utterly available for mission. In fact, after the very first dream, we read, "When Joseph awoke, he did as the angel of the Lord had commanded him." Here we have not just Joseph's response. He did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him, but we have the first human act recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. What is it? It's the manifestation of Joseph's availability. It's mission. He did what was commanded of him. I joined the Capuchin Friars about 8 years ago when I first started formation, and my formation was extremely difficult for me. I did not like it at all. I struggled. Thanks to great mentors and the prayers of so many people who loved me, I never left, though. I stayed. And yet there were moments of profound doubt, of anxiety even. And so if I can just share one moment, real quick, I was in the chapel at one point praying, and I kind of just gave up. I said, Lord, you made me. If you've called me, you have to handle this. I'm just such a mess. I have so many struggles. I fall short. I'm too weak. But I found myself, I kind of just surrendered. I said, this life is not my own. You made me, and you've called me, so it's yours. I surrender. And there was in that moment a kind of silent peace in my heart because I knew and accepted that the project of my life was not mine, but was God's. I surrendered. In the end, after 6 years of formation, I requested my permission to take my final vows, to be a Capuchin brother for life. In short, doubts still remained, but dare I say it, the day when I professed my final vows, wow, it was a foretaste of heaven. Indescribable joy, really. I surrendered, and I was for that reason totally free. When we surrender to God, we taste freedom. Only then does freedom become tangible. Only then does freedom become something concrete in our lives. Brothers and sisters, do not be afraid to belong to God, to be available to God, to surrender, and so be free. And sure, this is not a one-time decision. I've surrendered, okay, everything is good now. No, it's a daily decision. It takes courage in a world to surrender anew each day to God. But I think that we can find encouragement in St. Joseph. Right? Sometimes we say, how could God call me to this kind of life, to this way of life? Or perhaps we say, God is simply asking too much from me. Or perhaps we say, where is God? I can't hear him. These are the kind of questions that might inhibit our surrendering. And here Joseph can teach us a lot. Right? In his utter availability to God, he never questioned God's plan. He simply did it. He woke up and went on the mission given to him. In his belonging to God, he did not lament that God asked too much because he's already given his life to God. And in a loud world, the reality of Joseph's surrender teaches us to be quiet before God so that we can be ready for his word. Stillness and silence, these help to open the heart to God. It's interesting that we do not read about Joseph praying to God, but we do hear about God speaking to Joseph. So perhaps we can learn from this. It's not just about saying prayers to God, but it's also about being prayerfully available to God. Pope Benedict XVI said of St. Joseph that he was a man inwardly watchful for God. Perhaps we can pray that we too can be inwardly watchful to the Lord. And so in drawing this little reflection to a close, I turn to the first dream of St. Joseph when the angel of the Lord tells him that the child Jesus will save people from their sins. And with these startling words, the identity and mission of Jesus emerge. Right? He is the Son of God. Imagine the gravity of what Joseph heard. But he did not retreat in the face of such a scary responsibility. He accepts the child. Joseph does not try and understand the full details of it all, but he simply does what is asked. Joseph welcomes Jesus unconditionally. Do we? Do we welcome Jesus without qualification like Joseph? Do we believe that Jesus wants to come into our lives? Do we accept him unconditionally like Joseph did? Joseph welcomes all that is holy. The word from the angel, Mary, Jesus. He welcomes that which is holy into his life. And he's able to do it because he's surrendered his life to God. So let us, my brothers and sisters, turn to Joseph and ask him to lead us to that which is holy. And encouraged by his own courage, may we welcome the holy into our own lives as well. St. Joseph, help us to welcome Jesus like you did. Help us to be available to God like you are. Help us to surrender.